why this isn't broken, it's not unbalanced, it shouldn't be nerfed by Blizzard. We're talking about Rend here, how it's scaling with 2 aspects. You can get some insane numbers on a stationary target, do not get me wrong. But in any real application, and you're going to see from my testing here, you need to leave this into the game because it's working just how it should, despite the numbers you're seeing on the screen. So let's talk about it. What up team, it is MurderInc, and as we can see I'm kind of on this like target dummy here. And I'm going to show you like if we can get it to proc just like it did in the start of the video here. The scaling and kind of the crazy scaling of the damage you're going to see with bleeds, and how some people can say it's not quite working. You see we're already at 1,000,000 damage here for the bleeds here, and we can stun again. I mean, obviously it's ideal when you're not getting knocked around by these mobs here. But yeah, so you can kind of get the point here now that we're ramping up here. 23 million bleeds all the way back down to 4 million. So why is this not balanced? I don't have to hit this target dummy anymore because, again, you can use this bugged elite for testing. But beyond testing, it doesn't give you a good indication as to what's really going on with the character. Alright, so what's the build? What am I going on about here? So the 2 things you have to know are Berserk Ripping, which I'm using the baseline version of. The baseline. So, I mean, the numbers you saw, they can go up to the trillions. The trillion, infinite integers on a stationary boss that's not fighting back and all that good stuff. So we have Berserk Ripping here, and then we have Skullbreaker. Stunning a bleeding enemy deals 64% of their total bleeding amount to them as physical damage. So what's happening? Why are these insane numbers appearing on our screen? So we're putting up a bleed onto any target. Our bleed, in this instance, is going to be Rend here. Once we use Rend, we're using the 2-handed version, 2 one-handers. And if you are aware of how the one-handed expertise works, we're using a mace here, paired with the concussion talent here, because we want lucky hit chance to land the stun. And even though Rend says slashing weapon, requires a slashing weapon, you're going to get away with using one one-hander and one one-handed mace here, so we can take full advantage of concussion. So that's proccing stuns, which is then going to proc anemia here. Direct damage against bleeding enemies has another chance to stun them. Why do we want stuns? Because stunning a bleeding enemy deals 64% of their total bleeding amount. So why is this so significant, and why is this working bugged? We'll call it bugged for now, but honestly, Blizzard, if you're watching this, don't nerf this, and you're going to see why. The bleeding amount that is dealt from Skullbreakers is scaling with all of our multipliers. So everything in the Paragon, everything on our gear, it's scaling with sword expertise as well, 20% of direct damage, and with that it's also scaling direct damage with Berserk Ripping here, so 40%. So if you keep stunning the target, it's going to keep snapshotting and multiplying over and over and over again to where you saw those ridiculous numbers. So you might be thinking, how isn't this busted? I'm going to show you how right here. If you look at a typical dungeon, normal application here, as good as it is to be able to have ridiculous bleeding numbers, you have to build tanky if you've ever done any type of nightmare dungeon here. And this one specifically, if you don't stun them instantly, you're going to get blown up, which is why attack speed is important. So someone made a comment in the last video, I like how you show your deaths. There was a very, very stupid death by me, and it's important to show it because the main goal of this video is to show how poorly bleeds are in this game at the moment here. So you're going to see once I get the initial stun proc, they just start ticking for millions, and if I stun them again with lucky hit, it's more millions and millions and millions, and eventually there becomes a sequence where you just start one-shotting. Now we're going to come back to this 84 because this is kind of low here, but I really want to talk about is the 100 runs that I've done. And yes, I died many times in this because despite how overpowered this scaling is, and you can call it a skill issue all you want. Like, I get people are going to be like, oh, you're just not good enough to do this, but Like let's take a look at this right here. Let's see what kind of numbers we're getting. So we have a damage resistance aura here, which is not good, and I just randomly steel grasp. Usually in a 100, if you throw a steel grasp like that, you die. Like you just die here. And because the initial damage of bleeds are so bad, you can see I'm struggling heavily with this. There are many mechanics that punish even this insane, busted, whatever you want to call it, bugged version of bleeds, because bleeds just aren't viable. It was originally nerfed, so the current bug you see here was applying to applied bleeds. Now we don't have that anymore. And you can see Steel Grasp just moved the damage aura resistance guy behind me, but now you can see, so this popping effect you're looking at right here, and there's a 14 million that's going to pop up. Actually, it went away really quickly. So the popping effect you're seeing from this, that is the skull breakers and the ripping interaction with each other here. Let's see. Oh, this pull is probably going to be sus. Do I die? I don't die. Okay. So now we're scaling here, and then as soon as we ground stomp, yeah, okay, I do die. So you can see how much of a pain it is. Because first of all, Rend's only frontal. So you have to be slashing in front of you. If there's anything behind you, you're doing 0 damage to it. And when you Steel Grasp, for some reason, the mobs like to spread out all around your hitbox, which makes no sense to me. So ideally, you're going to Rend here. Then you stomp and you just see the massive bleed. Like, we just destroyed those mobs in front of us. Is that broken? That's the real question here. Is that broken? Now, there's a variant I'm going to show you after this clip. And again, we're going to see. This is in a Nightmare 100. So this isn't easy content. And if it looks like it's easy, I don't know. I've already died enough times. Yes, you can say there's stupid mistakes. Like, I get that, but this build is a very high skill cap build for being Rend. If you level with Rend, you know this, because you can't just like face tank hits here. So the easier way to do this is the build I'm going to show you that I just swapped to, where I dropped the basic attack. The reason why dropping the basic attack isn't ideal, so I'm going to show you. Let's see if this is a good one. No, so I died again to the same thing. Damage aura and the kamikaze guys is not a good combo for this. But I didn't want to do shift to ruins like everyone does, because it would probably steamroll through that. Okay, so here we go. What do we got for numbers? We still have the damage aura again. And you would think this would be a roadblock, but we do get to elites, I promise you. So we group them up. We use our stun here. That's where we proc our first skull breakers. So that's why we're taking War Stomp. It's a guaranteed, despite it not working for Whirlwind, by the way. It's not a guaranteed stun for Whirlwind build. It is a guaranteed stun for skull breakers. So I bleed them. I run away until my shouts are back. It is the cringe 3-shout version. If you want to look at my bar here, we're using no basic attack, Rend, Steel Grasp, and then Stomp. Those are the abilities we're using. So yes, it is another one of those cringe builds, and we saw at the end there, even though I was kind of going through it a bit quickly. Let's back up just a little bit more. So this is where we should be able to get it. So we see the initial 2 million bleed. Then we're going to proc another stun on top of that, which is going to multiply by all of our multipliers again. So 2 million goes to 12 million. Is it a large jump? Yes. Is it easy to do in a tier 100? Tier 100 for me, because I have optimized gear, the aspects aren't optimized. But if you didn't see my stats, I mean, I guess I can just swap to in-game if I didn't DC yet. Look at this. I have 18,000 health. And then I'll just burn one for the video. With an armor flask, I have 9,250 armor. Disobedience max roll on the neck here. And the one good thing that this build did is it gave me the tankiest Paragon board you will ever see in your life here. I have this in a planner, and I'll probably post it just in case something does change with bleeds here, but this works now, and hopefully it does work for the foreseeable future. But this Paragon board took me a while to make this. Let's just say it took me a while to make this, but we have the amount of DR we have in this build is crazy. And like I said, we were still getting, from this footage we're looking at, we're still getting dominated here. So I did 2 100 Ancient Laments. and 1/100. I forget, it's at the end here. So let's go to some better stuff with the bleeds, where some people can think this is a bit OP here, where we're just pulling a pack. Another death. You're welcome. I know you guys enjoy seeing the deaths. But we're trying to see the big numbers. So like 4 million, is that a crazy bleed? Yes, 4 million is a lot to bleed. I think it's what, twice a second, so that's 8 million DPS, but again, you have to be tanky enough to take hits. If you cannot take hits with this build, you're going to be, I don't know, you're out of your mind if you think you can just run up to a pack, pull them, and one-shot them every single time. It's not going to work out that way. There are a few cases where I can do that, and even some where there are elites, but even like this, if you're caught anywhere, I mean, first of all, no one in their right mind is doing a Nightmare 100 with the Enrage effect. I don't know if I showed the key, but I have monsters Enrage dealing X amount more damage, so this is like a 110 for the damage dealt. So there was a perfect example. We snapshot for 8 million on the Skull Breakers, and then we were critting for like 12 million bleeds here. So let's get a nice pull. I know I have an elite. Alright, so here we are with like another damage resistance mob here, and despite it being right in front of me, okay, it finally dies. So now we can essentially do some pretty good damage here. So like, we melted that. There are many builds that can melt. I mean, there are builds that are just one-shotting, first of all. So again, the amount of skill required to get the output we're seeing here, to just straight up nerf it, you're going to re-kill bleeds, and it's going to be as dead as it has been until now. We found the broken mechanic to make this build remotely viable. You cannot do this against bosses because you cannot stun bosses, so you're not one-shotting bosses. And now if you're ready to see the scariest pull of my life here, we have Fallen Shamans. If you know about these from pushing, you know they're the scariest mobs in the game here. We'll group them up. We start chaining the stuns, chaining the bleeds. They're enraged. Keep that in mind here, and they're dead. Just like that, they are dead. And I think this is where my DR goes down for 1 second, and I just get one-tapped. I think it's right after I kill the elites. Right there. Okay, so that's the fail right there. So why is this build not broken? Let's have a look at this. Just take a look at this, back to the 84. I'm lucky I clicked at this. So these objects here, you cannot stun them. Look at the normal bleed damage in this game with the build that's tanky enough to survive in Nightmare 100 dungeons. This is the pushing variant of the build. Are you kidding me? This is what bleeds are in this game? Like, this is what Blizzard has done. They have nerfed it to where this is where they're at, as far as raw damage. Could I stack damage to the moon? Sure. Would I survive anything above, like, 70? No. I could showcase 50 keys, 60 keys of me doing disgusting Rend damage for sure here. But anyone who tried to copy that would only be able to do 50s and 60s keys. They would never be able to go higher, and ideally you want to go higher. The next thing to talk about are these blood blisters. The build can't even kill blood blisters, so you have to tank them. So what does that mean? That means when you go into a Renegade's Retreat 100, let's take a look at this now. Renegade's Retreat 100. So this one you can see I'm utilizing the bleeds, going in there, one-shotting everything, running around for my shouts again. They're back up, Steel Grasp, rinse and repeat. Stun, War Stomp, insane amount of damage here. The issue is, as soon as one of these blood blisters goes into the ground here, I have to tank it now. So I'm stacking my fortified, I'm making sure I'm topped off. I still died. I was just shy of 100% fortified with, like I said, it's not even 9, it's like 13 or 14,000 armor, because I have full disobedience stacks, full fortified, the most DR you can imagine in this game. And that was a poor example because I didn't use my skills properly, which again goes to, don't just nerf this interaction here. because you're seeing ridiculous numbers on like a showcase mob that I started the video out with. This build is not easy to play. Bleeds are already in an awful spot in this game, and it takes a lot to get this going. As we'll see here, it does a ton of damage, but even still, there are builds that are doing way more damage than this here. So that's what I wanted to showcase, and the fact that I cannot kill blood blisters in 100 because the non-bugged bleed damage just isn't high enough. So this build's actually a lot of fun, and it's going to stay like this. So if you wanted to do this, we can close out of this here. I'll throw up the planner. I have the planner available. You just need ripping, skull breakers, accelerating helps, of course, retribution, echoing fury, bold chieftain's loop, and you can do like a for fun version of this. Any pushing variant is going to have frenzy. You need the 8% damage reduction. If you don't have it, you are going to die. It's that simple. You're going to die. This is like a bleed version of double swing, except for double swing works on everything. Bleed only works with a bugged interaction. That can scale infinitely. I'll give it that. I know I've said it 50 times, but it's important to understand that you can't just call something OP and bugged and that it needs to get nerfed when the current nerfed version isn't even viable to play. Like I said, if you're doing 50s, 60s, 70s with Rend in a glass cannon build, and you're like, what do you mean not viable? I've been playing Rend for this whole time. Go to 100. Go to some real content, right? Anyone, I can go with a basic attack build and clear a 70 right now. At the same speed, you can clear Rend. If you don't believe me, comment. I will do it and I'll make one. I already tested out basic attack skills and the scaling, and specifically lunging strike, I can one-shot things with it. So for that reason alone, if you want to do real content, they got to figure something out. They got to buff the on-hit Rend damage, or they just increase the amount of bleeding. Like bleeding damage over 5 seconds, make this like 1,730%. And then bleeds are now viable in the game. And then nerf the aspects that we're using it today. Like you would have to make a change that drastic to make any of these builds viable at all. So that's going to conclude the video. Like I said, I'll leave a build plan if you want to mess around with this until it's nerfed, hotfix, changed. Hopefully they don't do it. Look at necromancers, look at druids. They're doing ridiculous damage where their hotfixes. So I hope they keep this, but even if they do keep this, don't expect this to be easy. This is going to be very difficult. And if you think you're going to face a boss with this build, you're going to be doing as much damage as I was doing to those inanimate objects for objectives at the end. So that's going to conclude this video here. Let's have a look at that clip one more time of doing the insane numbers so we can just dream of having fun one day, even though I would say the high risk, high reward of this build is rather fun because the numbers are impressive and it feels good when you outmaneuver everything and if you do in fact get a clear of 100. So that's it for this one. I'll see you all in the next upload.